Awesome. Okay, so how you guys doing? My name's Gregg. I got a bunch of emails and you called me Dr. Gregg, and I don't hear that very often because in college it's kind of, well, it depends who you are, but in this computer science department especially, it's Chris. So you guys can call me Chris, and I'm not worried about that at all. Although I did teach a number of years of high school, so I was very used to, hi, come on in. I was very used to being called Mr. Gregg at that point, but that was before much more schooling. So, how you guys doing?
Good.
Come on in. We're just getting started here. So, as I said, I teach up at Stanford. I'm in the computer science department. This is actually my first year there. So I'm kind of brand new to Stanford and Palo Alto and this whole area. It's awesome, by the way. So that's great that you guys reached out to me, and I'm so excited to chat with you today. Here's what I thought I'd do. I brought a little demo, and I'll show you that kind of near the end. But for now, let's just talk. What I wanted to do is, instead of throwing slides up here, which you can look, I have some slides that you guys have, and you can go look at them later. They've just got a few words on them. But what I'll do is I figured I'd just kind of show you about where Gregg has been and how I ended up in STEM and how I ended up doing what I'm doing, which is like building fun things like this and teaching computer science to a lot of people who love to learn about computer science. Okay, so let's get going. So I started in a little place called Skinny Atlas, New York. It's pronounced like a thin book of maps, but it's spelled really weird. And so this is in central New York. You guys ever been to upstate central New York, anybody? If you've been up there, yeah, this is the Finger Lakes region. It's very beautiful. It's also really cold in the winter, and I'm kind of glad I don't actually live there in the winters anymore, but it's beautiful. I do like to go visit still. So I went to a public high school, and public grade school, public high school, and I loved like school in general. Not all the time. I don't think you can love it all the time, but I really did enjoy school and had a good time with it. And I also, when I was a kid, my dad had, this was actually before everybody had computers, my dad actually had one at work that he brought home one day, and I was like, whoa, a computer. I want to learn how to use this. And my grandfather, who was an electrical engineer, also had a computer like at his house, a little, really tiny one that I learned how to program on. And that's how I started like into the whole idea of computers and programming and kind of sciencey things and tech things. And it was all because I had some relatives who kind of gave me the interest in it. My grandfather in particular was an electrical engineer, and when I got to his house, they lived in Virginia. When I visited, I saw this computer and I said, oh, that's really neat. And I asked him, I said, does it have a microchip in it? And I was like 7. And he said, it has lots of them, let's find out. And we like opened the thing up and saw all the little components and everything, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. So that kind of got my brain going on that. So I went to high school, did some AP classes, did some sciencey things, loved physics, loved calculus, all those nerdy things. I do not have any shame in saying that I'm a bit nerdy, but I would hope you might expect that from being a computer science professor. So then I ended up, after high school, I ended up going to Baltimore, Maryland, which is where Johns Hopkins University is, and I ended up at Johns Hopkins University for my undergraduate work, and it was in electrical engineering. And the reason it was electrical engineering was because and computer engineering. It had a little bit of computer science in it. It also had some electronics and things, and I thought that was really cool. And my grandfather was a big influence. Like, I had known about electrical engineering for so long that I really wanted to study it. So went to Johns Hopkins, did 4 years of that. What I can tell you about college, and I know a lot of you guys are thinking of it very soon, there's a lot more focus on academics when you're in college. Now, I mean, in high school, and in a good high school like Pali, it's very, very good too. But I think the idea of going to a school where most people are focused on academics is pretty cool. I met tons of classmates who were so smart and like doing really cool things that it just opened my mind up. I mean, I came from a tiny little town in central New York. I didn't know that much. I mean, I was pretty naive, kind of still am in some sense, but I was pretty naive and I didn't know a lot of these things. So I got to study with a lot of people who like really were into either electronics or computer science. My best friend to this day is, I met him in a computer science class, and we still talk. I actually, last year when I was in Boston, I actually lived with him for a while. So you make a lot of really good friends in college. I make a lot of friends in high school too, but I think college really is place where you make the most friends. And that's really where you have access to like cool technology. A lot of universities have a fair amount of money, and they can spend it on things like, things like technology that you get to access and play with. Like if you're going into biology or something, you'll go to college and you'll get this biology lab, and it's going to have all the stuff that you never could necessarily have in high school. And it's going to be like you're going to have all this equipment and technology, and it's going to be really cool. So, so I think that that was pretty neat. But spent my 4 years there, and after the college, I kind of had a, what am I going to do? This was like while I was still in college. So I said, what am I going to do? And the Navy actually sent me a letter. And the Navy said, hey, why don't you go or come to the Navy and become a nuclear engineer on submarines. And I said, whoa, that looks really cool. That sounds really cool. Be a nuclear engineer. I didn't know much about nuclear engineering, but I was an electrical engineer, so maybe I could figure it out. And so I went and started that program. Didn't do very well in it. Sometimes this happens in life where you go and you try to do something and you didn't do very well in it. So I actually quickly switched from nuclear engineering to cryptology, which is the study of codes and code breaking and all that, and that was pretty cool. I did that, my training in Pensacola, Florida, down here. The training for that was as much about the technology as it was about leadership. And if you guys end up in some sort of STEM field, you'll kind of realize that you can do a couple different paths. Some people love the actual like digging into the real tech, and I'm that kind of person, to tell you the truth. And other people like doing the management end of it too. And throughout your career, you can actually move up and do the management part. Okay, so it keeps it ended up being a lot more about the management part than the actual technology. But that was in Pensacola. So one of the things in the Navy, anybody have any relatives in the military? Nobody does. This is amazing about these days. Like not many people know people in the military. But that's the way it goes. One thing the Navy always tells you when you sign up is, we're going to show you the world, right? And they really did. So the next place that I ended up was San Diego, which was awesome. And it got me to California. And really the reason I'm standing here in front of you now is because the Navy sent me to California all those years ago, was because I loved California. And I said, I really want to get back and live there again. I've done that like 3 times in my life. But I ended up in San Diego. In San Diego, I was in the Navy. And it wasn't really as technical as I would have liked, right? But I got to see some cool places. I was in San Diego doing, basically deploying on ships. In fact, from San Diego, I got on a ship, which immediately sailed right past Hawaii. We didn't even stop. It was really sad. We're like, oh, there's Hawaii. Why don't you let us stop there? Didn't get to go there, but then it went past there to Malaysia and Singapore. And we sailed over there to Malaysia and then Singapore. Sailing through the Singapore Strait is one of the most like hair-raising things of your life, because there's about 1 billion ships that all are trying to go every which way, and there's almost no rules. You just sail, and it was like really crazy. But I done that a few times. Loved Singapore. Okay, back in those days, and in fact still somewhat today, they sent me from there, and this is all on one ship. Sent me from there up to the Persian Gulf. And up here, this is where the technical stuff really came into being, where I was really using a lot of this stuff day to day. What we were doing there was collecting a lot of signals, what we call signals intelligence, from the people who, in the countries around the area, right? Unfortunately, we can't go into too much more detail than that. These things are like classified and things. But the big idea is people are broadcasting things on their, using their radios, and we collected it and then forwarded it on to people who might care about these things. So our job was basically to make sure that we did that. And it was pretty technical. We had lots of radios, and all the people that worked for me had these. It was like out of some like 1960s movie. They had like the big headsets on and like turning dials and things. So that was kind of cool. All right, so we got done with that. This is a 6-month tour, by the way. And then they sent me on this tour back to Australia. We actually did stop in Australia, a tiny little town called Bunbury, Australia. The only reason I put this one on here is so the map would keep going that way, because this is the direction we took. And then back to Hawaii, and then back to San Diego. And that took about 6 months, so Navy tours take about 6 months. And then I did it all over again on a different ship. So these things are, you do that. And it was a bigger ship the second time. And I actually met some very good friends doing that too, who I'm still with today. After San Diego, the Navy said, where would you like to go? And I said, Australia was kind of cool. You don't happen to have anything in Australia, thinking there was no possibility they did. But it never hurts to ask these things, because they did send me to Australia, this time on a plane, which was nice. And I got to spend 2 years in Australia working for the Australian Navy. Now, this whole time, I'm not really doing too much STEM stuff. I'm not really, I feel like I'm a little bit, all my skills are going away a little bit. I mean, I'm doing some managing of people, and I'm doing that, but I'm not really doing the fun stuff that I like. But I did, that beach right there was a famous, Australian surf beach, and, I would go there every day after work and surf. So that was cool. So, that part of it was really neat. But my technical skills were not, I wasn't really, back into, science and tech and all that, and I felt a little removed from it, which was too bad, because I like that sort of stuff. So, from here, I had to make a decision. I had to say, what am I going to do? Do I stay in the Navy, or do I do something else? And I realized I'd never find a job as good as the one I had in Australia, in the Navy. So I said, I'm going to switch gears completely. And this is something people do a lot in life, right? I switched gears and I decided I'm going to become believe it or not, a high school teacher to teach physics. Okay? You guys most of you have probably taken some physics at this point, right? Hopefully you have a good physics teacher, or physics teachers here. Hopefully. But I loved doing it. What I did was, so in order to become a teacher, you first have to go back to school. So I went to Harvard University and got a master's in education, but with the idea to teach physics. So I did the program there. I learned about how to teach a little bit, and learned a little more about teaching physics in particular. I did that for a year, and then right after that, I actually did not. Well, that summer after there, I went to, of all places, Ireland. And I spent the entire summer in Ireland doing absolutely nothing to do with tech. It was writing for a travel guide, which is completely opposite of STEM sort of things. And this is another thing. We talk about being in STEM fields. That doesn't mean it has to be your entire life, right? I spent an entire summer having the time of my life writing about all these crazy places in Ireland. I think I probably literally went to every bar in Ireland. And or at least in Dublin anyway, because I had to write about it, right? And so it was a lot of fun, and it was not tech at all. But I knew I was about to go back and teach high school physics, which I did in Brookline High School, which is back in Massachusetts, right near Boston. And at Brookline, I learned how to teach. I started teaching physics and loved it. And I love the teaching. I love physics because you get to do all these demonstrations and all that stuff. So it's kind of fun. And I had a great time doing it. In fact, I did say, remember I said I wanted to come back to California? I actually did spend 1 year. I wasn't planning on 1 year, but it ended up being just 1 year in Santa Cruz. Anybody know anybody at Pacific Collegiate School down in Santa Cruz? It's a tiny little charter school down in Santa Cruz. And so I was there. That's actually not the building we were in because they moved since then. But I taught physics there. And then for various reasons, actually, the next year moved right back across the country again. So I had to drive across the country and then drive back the next year. So it's a lot of moving around. And then spent another 3 years there. And then I finally said, okay, I've been doing this teaching for a while. I love it. I still want to teach, but I really want to get a PhD. I really still feel a little bit removed from all that engineering and electrical engineering stuff. So after that, I ended up going down to University of Virginia. So down there, and it's a great little college town. It's a terrific school, and I loved it. Let's see, can you see where? Yeah, so here's the stadium, the football stadium. Our building was right there. I spent many hours listening to the football games while I was writing my PhD dissertation. So it was, I at my window could see the stadium, but I had to listen to all the games. I couldn't actually go to them because I was working too hard. I got my PhD in computer engineering and basically computer engineering, with the idea that I would end up teaching again and go back and maybe do some more research and things. My research was on, when you do a PhD, your research is really in-depth in one topic. You guys know in your computer you have a CPU, right? That's the thing that they talk about, it's 2.8 gigahertz and all that kind of stuff. You have a CPU in your computer, you also have a graphics processing unit. The graphics processing unit does all the stuff on the screen. And that stuff is I actually did my degree in making those two things work a little better together. But it's like way too technical, like not many people would really understand it because it's like you focus on something when you're doing a PhD. Like you focus really deeply into it. Anyway, I did that. And then I said, now I'm gonna go finally teach college, which I wanted to do for a long, long time. And it turns out that I was still in the Navy Reserves. And the Navy said, we're sending you to Africa. And I went, you're sending me to Africa? And they said, yeah, we're sending you to Africa. And it's, and I thought, wow, giraffes and elephants. And like, no, we're sending you to Djibouti, Africa. And Djibouti, Africa is the Horn of Africa. Let me zoom out a little bit. The Horn of Africa, which is, I'll give you a little perspective on Africa here. It's right there. Okay, this is the Horn of Africa here, right? Djibouti's here. Anyone know what this is down here? Somalia. Now, Somalia is a very, very, very dangerous area. And the reason they sent us to Djibouti was so that we could, like, try to influence people down in Somalia. And unfortunately, it's a very poor country, unfortunately, but it's also very dry, hot, dusty, and dirty. And I did do a little bit of, well, I did more managing of people again, because I'm still back in the Navy. But this was an entire year of what we call psychological operations. Well, actually, we call it information operations now, but it was really used to be called psychological operations, which is kind of making sure you have people, you influence people with posters or with flyers or radio programs, that sort of thing. So it wasn't really that technical, but anyway, did that for a year. Did not love it too much, I have to say. And then finally I got back into teaching. I got my first college teaching job at Tufts University back in Boston again. It's like I keep going back to Boston. I don't think I'm going to end up at. I'm hoping here's my where I'm going to stay at this point. But anyway, I went to Tufts and taught computer science there. So that's where I started teaching computer science, and I did that for about 2.5, 3 years, and loved it. One of the things I did while I was there, kind of in my spare time, and one of the nice things about teaching is if you do it right, you can have your summers free, right? So it's not easy to do that because of the money part of the equation, but you can have your summers free. And so what I did one summer was I built this, which is a little thing I decided to show you. And afterwards you can come and look at it. But what it is I bought this, I got a letter from a friend of mine, way back like 7 or 8 years ago. And it was a typed letter that she had actually typed on a typewriter. And she sent it to me, and I said, whoa, you guys ever got a typed letter? Probably not, right? That's kind of cool, getting a typed letter. My friend had a typewriter, she typed a letter. And I said, ooh, I want to type her a letter back. I don't have a typewriter. And then I said, wow, the problem with typewriters is there's like, you have to backspace if you do things wrong, but it's like, it actually puts it on the page, and so it's not a printer in the sense that you can like make it look good on the screen and then go. It's just, you got to type the keys one at a time. And it's and it's there. What you type is what you get on the like paper. And so I decided, I'm a computer engineer now. I can build something that makes this into a printer, right? And I thought I was going to be able to do it very easily. Turns out it's much harder than I thought. This is an electric typewriter. I got it on Craigslist. And what I've done is I've actually taken all these, you can come up and look at it later, but I've taken all these little switches, and when you apply a voltage to them, they're called solenoids. When you apply a voltage to them, it actually presses down. And I put them all above every key, and then hooked it up to this little board here that has like blinky lights and things, and that I had to design and make that. This is all stuff you learn in like electrical engineering school, so that was cool, although I didn't know some of it. I had to solder things, kind of really, you know, kind of cool. And then it's hooked up to an Arduino. I don't know if you guys have seen Arduinos before, but they're like little computers, so it's like computer, another computer, kind of quasi-computer, and then typewriter with switches and things. And that's what it is. So basically it's a printer, and it works as a printer, but I actually made it a little bit different. Have you guys ever seen you may have heard, any musicians in here? What do you play?
Guitar.
Guitar, how about you?
Flute.
Flute, there you go. In a symphony, they've got like all the different instruments, right? Well, there's a symphony called the Typewriter Symphony, where there's a guy who sits on stage with a typewriter, it's facing like this way, and he's looking at the audience, and the symphony plays their thing, and he actually types on it as like percussion. So it's like, it sounds pretty cool, he's got a little bell and whatever, and it goes. And so when I built this printer, one of my other professors I was working with said, you should make it do the Typewriter Symphony. And I said, what are you talking about that's impossible? And then I said, well, all right, it's not impossible. I'll give it a shot. So let me just do a little demo. Hopefully this will work. And Let's see. What it does is this. And so on and so forth, right? So it ends up being cool, and you can actually do this. And then it ended up getting online on Gizmodo and all these like other websites and things, and like people like said, "Oh wow, you're really a nerd, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." But this was so much fun to do, and you know, honestly, I love doing this stuff because I'm like a nerdy guy who loves tech, and I love like the whole idea of being able to do this because I know a little bit about programming and I know a little bit about electronics and so forth. This actually led to a class that I designed. A student helped me do some of this, and she and another student and I taught a wearable devices class last year, which was so much fun. We actually built little boards like this that were tiny and able to be put in to wear, and it was so cool. There were so many different neat things like that. So anyway, that was at Tufts, and then this past summer, I ended up getting a job here and moving to Stanford, where I'm teaching computer science now. So that's how I ended up going through like my STEM career, and it's not done yet, I hope. But I'm like all along the way, I had various things where it was one thing or another, all kind of related to STEM, except sometimes maybe not. There were some other parts of my life that weren't related to it. So I thought that was really, you know, I'm glad for the opportunities I've had to be able to do this sort of thing. Okay? All right. I thought that would be about enough talking. What questions do you guys have for me? Oh, what kind of things do you want to know? Who's thinking of STEM? Well, you're all kind of thinking of some sort of STEM careers, but what kinds of things are you thinking about? Yeah. Is it biotech? Yeah, biotech is huge these days, right? You know, the idea that if you have diabetes, in a few years, you will probably be able to get like an artificial pancreas that will end up making it so you never have to take insulin again. And it'll just work like your pancreas. And they've already got this. This is in testing and things now. But that is so cool, right? That biotech is just really, really neat. I mean, we're all going to become cyborgs someday, I guess, but you know, that's still pretty cool. By the way, what time do we have until 12?
Yeah, we have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, okay. So biotech, what else? What are you guys thinking about? Yeah, what are you thinking about? Surgeon, there you go. Another kind of biotech sort of thing. Yeah. My sister is an orthopedic surgeon, and pediatric orthopedic surgeon, which is kind of cool. And she has, she uses like, I mean, her surgeries now, a lot of it is done with a computer. You know, I mean, a robot basically. Yeah. Some of it's done with a robot. Not a lot of it, but some of it is, where she has to, you know, move the things around. It's actually doing the surgery inside the human for her. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. But you guys, what are you thinking about?
Like medicine.
Medicine, there you go. A lot of bio stuff. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody in physics, chemistry, or engineering sort of things? Are we thinking about those?
Electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering, yeah. I mean, this is fun stuff. I love it. Yeah, it's fun stuff.
That's so great.
All right. What other questions do you guys have?
So how long did it take you to make it in total?
How long did it take to make it? That's a good question. It took probably 100 or 200 hours of working. I mean, it took 6 months really. I mean, I started it and then tinkered, and then my friend who was the computer science guy I met in college designed this part. I was living with him at the time. He designed this this little covering thing, so that was cool. Yeah. So it took a while.
How was like learn the programming in the electrical engineering?
Say again?
Course?
What course?
No, you took a course to learn
I took lots of courses that over the years I had to learn these things. A lot of the programming came from all the programming classes I took. The electronics came from some of the electrical engineering stuff. I didn't know how to really do a lot of this like tiny little electronics. I had to learn that from YouTube, you know. But you get those, you know, pick it up here and there. Pick it up here and there. Yeah. What else?
Out of all the places you've been to, what was your favorite?
Oh, that's such a hard question.
Yeah,
it depends on, so the question was what was my favorite place I've been to in all those places? I enjoyed so many of them. I mean, I can tell you some of them I didn't love Djibouti. I mean, you know, but I mean, I loved Australia. I would live there again. California's great. This is why I'm back. And then they all have their good parts. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I found good things in all of them. Good things in all of them. Okay. Yeah.
Throughout your like missions abroad,
Mhm.
in the Navy, did you ever feel like it wasn't for a good cause?
This is a good question. Yeah, did I ever think that what I was doing in the Navy, like we weren't really doing it for a good cause? There were times I thought of that. Yeah, I mean, I'm technically still in the Navy Reserves, although they're not going to send me back to Africa. I hope. I don't think they will. And I do think of that a lot. I think of I think, you know, I'm not the one in charge of making those big decisions,
Yeah.
but yeah, there are definitely times where I thought, you know, I don't really think we should be here. Which is why I did get out. One of the other reasons I got out of active duty. I said, yeah, not really loving that part of it.
So you can, if you join the reserves, you can like get out.
You can get out, yeah. I mean, I stayed in long enough to actually get a kind of a retirement out of it, which is nice. But it's, but yeah, no, there's definitely, you have to make those decisions. And if you're going to work for any government organization, you have to make those decisions, right? Am I doing something for somebody that's doing good things? I think that's a big call, a big decision. Yeah.
Well, but what made you work for the Navy, even though you didn't study like that field?
Well, they pitched it pretty well to me. The Navy said, hey, you're going to go be a nuclear engineer on a submarine. And I said, oh, that's cool. So it was kind of the cool factor was the big one. And I needed a job. I mean, it was one of those things where I said, oh, that's a good opportunity to do the job. They paid for some of my college, which was nice. And then paid for what's called the GI Bill, which paid for like extra college afterwards as well. So that was cool.
Does the Navy have a school? Like you can like, do they teach you?
The Navy does have schools, yeah, the Naval Academy. You can teach at the Naval Academy. There's
Really good education, right?
They have, yeah, it's very good. Yeah, you can do that. If you want to talk about things like college and Naval Academy and that sort of thing, feel free to drop me an email and I'm happy to chat with you. In fact, these two will give you my email address.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to take, if anybody wants to come look at this, I don't want you guys to have to like run away if you want. So I'm happy for you guys to come up here and I'll chat with you about some other things as you go. Thanks very much.
Thank you.